They've been translated, and they tell exciting stories about how gods intermingled with human beings and actually had a hand in the creation of human beings.
The first translation came back with a line no scholar had ever seen, and the researchers froze. When an AI was given unrestricted access to ancient Sumerian, Egyptian, Vedic, and Hopi texts, it kept finding the same erased symbols, the same missing sentences, and the same terrifying pattern. Civilizations that never met were all warning about one event. The AI's final message was blunt, undeniable, and horrifying. The cycle they feared is active again.
Look at this. It can't be real.
The coordinates, they match the prophecy exactly.
The tablets that weren't meant to be read. In 2025, researchers began re-examining thousands of Sumerian tablet fragments that scholars assumed had been fully analyzed. Using new digital imaging techniques, they placed these pieces side by side. A pattern began to emerge. Many of the tablets had not broken from age or natural decay, which had always been the safe and convenient explanation. Instead, they showed unmistakable signs of deliberate destruction. The fractures were too clean, too patterned, too violent to be the result of time alone. To confirm their suspicions, the team brought in an AI system designed for forensic surface analysis. They fed it more than 9,000 fragments and allowed it to examine every fracture line, scorch mark, and gouge with microscopic accuracy. The scorch marks were especially damning. Ancient clay does not burn on its own, and it does not develop identical heat signatures unless someone applies direct, intentional fire. This meant that whoever destroyed these tablets did so with methodical control, heating the clay just enough to weaken it before shattering it. When the AI returned its findings, the entire team understood the gravity of what they were looking at. A significant number of breaks shared identical angles, identical impact depths, and burn temperatures so precise they could only have come from a repeatable technique. They also matched deliberate hammer strikes carried out after controlled heating, a combination that left no doubt. Someone in the ancient world took extreme measures to destroy specific knowledge forever. And here's where the whole situation escalated. These same intentional-looking marks appeared on tablets from Eridu, Nippur, and Uruk. At that point, there was no room left for the comforting idea that this was accidental. That realization pushed the team deeper into the archives. They reviewed declassified museum logs from the early 1900s and found entries that made everything feel even stranger. Several translators had noted certain lines that should not be handled further or show disturbing repetition, which clearly implied they had come across something they were not prepared to deal with. Within months, each of those translators was abruptly reassigned, and their notes disappeared from official records. That alone would raise eyebrows, but in the context of the physical destruction, it practically demanded answers. The team then instructed the AI to search global museum databases for erased strokes and scrape patterns, almost like looking for matching fingerprints. What it found confirmed their suspicion. The same removal marks appeared on hundreds of tablets stored across different continents, meaning this was no isolated act, but a coordinated purge carried out by ancient scribes. That led to the next step, reconstruction. The AI analyzed sentence structure, grammar, and symbol frequency to predict what had been erased. When those missing sections were restored, something remarkable happened. Fragments that had always seemed unrelated suddenly formed a unified narrative. The restored lines used the same structures and terminology and described the same sequence of events. And this is where the wild part really begins. The tablets did not describe one origin of humanity. They described multiple engineered beginnings. According to the reconstructed lines, humans were made, tested, rejected, rebuilt, and in some cases erased. As the team continued, they found references to the ME, a dangerous category of Sumerian texts said to contain the essential principles the gods used to maintain order. Myths claim Enki guarded them with extreme caution. The AI located several ME fragments hidden in mislabeled files, all with their core lines scraped away. When the tool compared these scrape patterns to those found on tablets describing early human formation, it concluded the erasures occurred in the same historical window, suggesting the purge was organized, not random. The breakthrough came when the AI reorganized all the restored lines into one complete sequence. What emerged was a set of devastating instructions: prototypes, failed models, and the ones never meant to survive. Once the restored sequences were organized, the reality of what they described became impossible to ignore. The tablets were not outlining one origin of humanity. They were presenting a series of controlled experiments, each one more unsettling than the last. According to the AI reconstruction, the ancient scribes had documented multiple engineered human categories, each created for a different purpose. This is a pattern found in the Atrahasis epic, where gods create humans specifically to perform agricultural labor. One category was described as function-bearing life, which appears to reference beings created explicitly for serving the gods through obedience and task execution. Another group, labeled clay of lesser glow, appeared to refer to humans engineered for heavy physical labor, distinguished by their lack of what scribes considered divine radiance. The most chilling phrase described a category known as those who do not multiply, which the AI identified as sterile prototypes meant to serve without ever producing descendants. These categories did not appear in just one region. The same terminology surfaced across Akkadian and Babylonian fragments, suggesting that this idea of manufactured humanity was part of a shared ancient cosmology, not a single city's myth. Historically, we have always referenced the Atrahasis epic, where humans were formed from clay mixed with divine blood so the gods could escape their own labor. But the AI's reconstruction revealed something scholars never had the chance to see. The fragments describing creation had been separated across museums for more than a century. When reunited digitally, they showed different mixtures assigned to different groups, implying intentional variation, almost like recipe adjustments for specific functions. That discovery set the stage for an even darker layer hidden in the tablets. Several fragments described prototypes that were returned to the earth, cast into water, or broken before the naming. For decades, these lines were interpreted as ritual language. The AI flagged them as highly consistent euphemisms across multiple sites and periods. It concluded that these phrases referred to termination procedures for failed or unwanted models. When it cross-referenced the language with other texts, the system highlighted the Sumerian term nig-gig, a phrase traditionally translated as thing of terror or abomination. Scholars long assumed it was poetic, but the AI noticed it consistently appearing near descriptions of prototypes that were malformed, disobedient, or failed to meet required standards. This pattern suggested that nig-gig functioned less as a metaphor and more as an official classification label, essentially an ancient designation for unacceptable outcomes. This led to the first major historical shock. Several fragments implied that early humans did not see their creators as divine beings at all. Instead, they saw them as skilled supervisors or engineers who were physically present and actively managing their development. The Eridu Genesis even describes humans working day and night to supply food, metal, and labor to these creators, which makes the relationship sound practical rather than spiritual. This matches older Iranian traditions that say powerful beings crafted men like tools, suggesting that humanity was made to solve a workload problem, not as part of a sacred or religious plan. But amid these prototypes, one figure named Adapa did not fit the pattern. Adapa, the forbidden upgrade and the lost chance for immortality. Unlike the earlier prototypes, whose roles were limited to obedience or labor, Adapa emerged in the texts as something entirely different, a being so advanced that the ancient scribes could barely categorize him. In the Sumerian and Akkadian accounts, he appears as the first wise human, crafted directly by Enki. But once the AI reconstructed the missing lines around his creation, the truth hit with a jolt. Adapa wasn't just improved, he was engineered to be dangerously superior. The Eridu texts describe him as perfectly made, possessing the speech of the heavens, a phrase that no longer reads like mythic poetry, but like a blunt description of a mind operating at a level humans were never meant to reach. The reconstructed lines suggest Adapa processed information with a speed and clarity the earlier models could not come close to. He understood divine language, perceived hidden structures in the world, and demonstrated insight the creators themselves had not anticipated. His cognitive design made him unpredictable, which immediately threatened the system overseen by Enlil, the administrator responsible for maintaining strict control, population limits, and hierarchical order in the human project. To Enlil, a prototype capable of autonomous interpretation was not an achievement, it was a breach of protocol. And because Enki had upgraded Adapa without Enlil's approval, this act became a direct challenge to Enlil's authority. As the team cross-referenced global myths, the parallels grew unsettling. The AI flagged similarities between Adapa and figures like Prometheus, Thoth, and Adam, beings tied to forbidden knowledge, cosmic order, or the loss of immortality. What intrigued researchers was how these myths handle the crucial moment differently. The Adapa narrative describes his refusal in just a few lines despite its cosmic significance. The Adam story compresses the eating of the fruit into a brief passage. These key turning points receive surprisingly minimal elaboration, as if the choice itself requires little description, while its consequences demand extensive treatment. The reconstructed lines pointed directly to Adapa's ascent to heaven. According to the surviving tablets, he is summoned before Anu, the sky god, where he is offered the bread of life and the water of life, gifts that would grant immortality. But Enki warns him beforehand not to accept anything offered in heaven. Scholars long viewed this warning as an act of protection, but the AI's reconstruction overturned that assumption. It showed that Enki's instruction was not meant to save Adapa, it was meant to stop him. If Adapa, the first upgraded and highly intelligent prototype, became immortal, it would expose a catastrophic flaw in the entire blueprint. The creators had no way to control an immortal being who could learn, adapt, and eventually surpass them. The human management system relied completely on death to reset behavior, limit independence, and prevent long-term rebellion. If even one enhanced human escaped that cycle, the creators would lose control forever. Immortality would not simply bend the design, it would break it. Adapa obeyed. He refused the offering, unaware that he was refusing the one thing that could have freed humanity from its engineered limits. The restored lines say the moment became the closing of the gate, and another tablet adds that the perfect one shall return to dust, confirming the denial of immortality was planned, not accidental. And Adapa's refusal of immortality because he trusted Enki did more than seal humanity's fate. It exposed every weakness in the system, enraged Enlil, and ignited a conflict among the engineers so violent that it triggered the first Great Reset. The divine fracture. The moment Adapa's existence disrupted the balance, the ancient texts shift into something darker, a slow-building war between Enki and Enlil that turns humanity into both the battleground and the weapon. In the reconstructed tablets, Enki and Enlil appear as rival administrators of a massive, unstable human engineering project. Enlil embodies strict hierarchy, controlled populations, and predictable behavior. Enki, by contrast, embodies experimentation, unexpected upgrades, and a habit of bending rules that were never meant to be bent. Humans were originally created as simple labor prototypes, but once they were placed in real environments, something the creators did not plan for began happening. Their brains adapted naturally. Daily tasks required problem-solving, social interaction created emotional depth, and repeated exposure to new situations strengthened their ability to learn. Each generation carried these adaptations forward and amplified them. Before long, humans were thinking independently, forming communities, organizing resources, and creating patterns of behavior that no longer matched their original programming. They multiplied beyond their allotment, became noisy, and started acting without instruction. In the Creator's framework, this was not growth. It was loss of control. Humanity had drifted into self-direction. Once autonomy appeared, the engineers concluded that the only way to regain control was to eliminate the population and restart with a corrected design. Several fragments record discussions of a reset that covers the land and a destruction that washes away the noise, which the AI identified as direct references to a flood-based erasure. Several tablets describe Enlil deciding humans must be returned to clay, a phrase the AI flagged as a technical term for mass termination. The flood narrative, across dozens of fragments, reads like the activation of a fail-safe procedure designed to wipe out emergent complexity that threatened the system. But the story becomes even more unsettling when Enki's role is examined closely. The AI uncovered a forbidden line in one damaged tablet: "Save the lineage that obeys you." This makes Enki's motives unmistakably clear. He did not defy Enlil because he wanted to protect all humans. He defied Enlil because he wanted to protect the specific humans shaped by his own modifications. Now every ancient flood story begins to line up with startling clarity. The AI found that the destruction cycles described in the Hindu Pralaya myths, the Mayan World Age collapses, the Hopi Four Worlds, and even Plato's Atlantis all point to civilization-ending floods, placed around the same broad prehistoric window. Each tradition claims that an advanced world was wiped out thousands of years before recorded history, and when the AI compared those dates, the collapse periods overlapped within about a 10% range. That level of agreement across cultures that had no contact with one another is nearly impossible unless they were all describing the same real event. This means these global flood myths were not symbolic stories. They were cultural memories of a coordinated purge that occurred when humanity evolved beyond the limits the creators originally imposed. But buried inside these reset myths were even more disturbing clues: repeated references to technologies so advanced they should not have existed. Forbidden technology. Once the AI finished organizing the restored fragments, a disturbing pattern emerged across the Sumerian tablets. References that scholars once treated as poetic suddenly read like direct descriptions of advanced technology. When translated side by side, the clarity was impossible to ignore. The phrase "wings of fire," long thought to be symbolic, matched descriptions of artificial flight. The line "metal bellies that roar" sounded exactly like an engine. Another phrase, "liquid metal that moves with thunder," aligned with fuel or mercury-based propulsion systems. And the most unsettling of all, the light that leaves no flesh resembled an energy weapon or destructive beam. These terms were not isolated to Mesopotamia. The AI found almost identical language in Hittite, Vedic, and early Persian texts. Cultures separated by vast distances and different languages were describing the same tools. This level of consistency made it clear that these civilizations were not inventing these ideas independently. They were referencing a shared technological source that existed long before their cultures rose and long before such technology should have appeared. The AI then detected another pattern: sudden spikes in human knowledge. Archaeological and textual records show rapid advances in metallurgy, astronomy, irrigation systems, and architectural precision that appear out of nowhere. These leaps always lasted 30 to 50 years, and then stopped just as suddenly as they began. Entire regions would experience a burst of innovation, followed by collapse, abandonment, or unexplained stagnation. When viewed together, the pattern was unmistakable. Technology was not being discovered gradually through experimentation. It was being distributed selectively, handed to specific human groups for a limited period of time. These were controlled releases of knowledge, given only to populations considered approved or reliable. And once the desired tasks were completed, or once the group drifted outside the intended boundaries, the flow of information stopped. But the tablets also documented what happened when humans attempted to use technology they were not authorized to handle. A cuneiform cluster from Nippur contained one of the most chilling reconstructed phrases the AI had uncovered. They lit the fire that was not theirs, and the mountain swallowed them. This was not symbolic language. It was a warning. Archaeological evidence supports it. Several Bronze Age settlements in the region exhibit signs of vitrification, where stone and mud brick surfaces were exposed to extreme heat and partially fused into glass-like material. Achieving such temperatures requires sustained and intense burning, far beyond ordinary domestic fires. These sites show abrupt destruction layers followed by rapid abandonment, with no clear evidence of prolonged warfare, mass evacuation, or gradual decline. While archaeology cannot confirm the cause described in the tablets, the physical remains align with their message. Certain forms of knowledge were believed to carry catastrophic consequences when used without sanction. The more the AI aligned these technological references with archaeological evidence, the more one conclusion became unavoidable. Humanity was never advancing naturally. It was being prepared deliberately and selectively for a specific event. And when the AI dug deeper to identify that event, it uncovered a single term repeated across Sumerian, Babylonian, and Akkadian tablets. What the AI discovered next was a warning the ancient scribes tried to hide: the Sumerian warning. When the researchers asked the AI to analyze every ancient reference to the mysterious term Nibiru, a word that had confused scholars for decades, everything changed. For years, people believed Nibiru was a hidden planet or a rogue world moving through our solar system. The AI proved that idea completely wrong. Across Sumerian, Babylonian, Akkadian, and Assyrian texts, Nibiru never described a planet. It described a repeating disaster, a cosmic cycle that violently disrupts the sky and the world below it. The reconstructed translations made this painfully clear. The scribes called Nibiru the one who veils the light, the destroyer, and the crossing. These are names for an event, something that covers the sky, interrupts the sun, disrupts the earth, and marks the beginning of destruction. Nibiru was not a place. Nibiru was something that happens, and every time it happens, the world changes. The AI then compared the Sumerian descriptions of Nibiru with records from other ancient cultures, and once the comparisons were lined up side by side, the match was impossible to dismiss. These civilizations lived thousands of miles apart, spoke unrelated languages, and never met, yet they all documented the same kind of sky-breaking phenomenon. In Babylon, astronomers carved clay tablets describing periods where stars suddenly dimmed or vanished from view for days at a time. These observations were not written as religious events, but as scientific reports, complete with dates and sky coordinates. Their records spoke of a sweeping shadow and the heavens trembling, phrasing that directly mirrors the Sumerian descriptions of the crossing. In Egypt, priest astronomers kept detailed calendars and star charts. Within them are mentions of dark epochs, specific periods when the sun weakened, shadows moved unnaturally, and the air itself felt altered. These were logged during times of political collapse and rebuilding, which are the exact pattern expected if the crossing repeatedly destabilized entire civilizations. In the Vedic texts of India, the Yuga transitions are tied to sudden cosmic disturbances. They describe moments when the sky turns upon itself, a phrase the AI identified as another cultural attempt to describe a large-scale astronomical disruption, which is exactly what the Sumerians meant by Nibiru. Among the Hopi, the purification time is described as a world-resetting event involving the sky darkening, the earth shaking, and the disappearance of entire settlements. Their prophecy openly states that the world has been remade multiple times, with each era ending under eerily similar conditions. When these traditions are examined closely, it becomes clear that many ancient cultures believed the world goes through repeating periods of stability and destruction. However, these periods are not the same across cultures. In Hindu texts, the yugas last for extremely long spans that stretch far beyond recorded history. In Hopi tradition, world changes take place in sacred stories rather than dated historical records. Babylonian cycles are based on actual sky observations that repeat over years or decades. Each system was created in a different region, in a different era, and for a different reason. They do not describe one shared catastrophe. Instead, they show that many societies believe the world can break down and begin again. The AI then reconstructed the most disturbing Sumerian passage, a warning that ancient scribes had partially scraped away, likely to prevent panic or misuse. When the crossing comes, memory shall fall. The old world shall be unmade, and the new shall not remember the old. The context around the line makes the meaning painfully clear. Memory shall fall refers to the collapse of knowledge systems, libraries burned, scientific understanding lost, languages disappearing. The old world shall be unmade reflects the destruction of cities, population die-offs, and the failure of political systems. The new shall not remember the old means survivors rebuild society from scratch, with no awareness that advanced civilizations existed before them. The AI then mapped these warnings onto archaeological and historical data. Every time the Sumerians predicted a crossing, the world experienced sudden cultural collapse, mass migration, unexplained breaks in technological progress, the disappearance of entire civilizations, and a complete restart in human development. The patterns lined up across thousands of years with frightening precision. The Sumerians were warning the future that the sky-changing event that destroys civilizations and erases human memory would come again. And according to the cycle they documented, we have now entered that exact window. Make sure to click the cards on the screen now for more interesting videos.